Hey, Black and Fit family. This is Cherie White, founder of Black and Fit. And today I have with me Dr. Ebony. She is a mental wellness and licensed therapist. Um, we are going to be talking about what she does, which is focuses on racial trauma and providing tools for African Americans to use to improve and help with their mental wellness. So it's going to be a quick interview. So tell me a little bit about what you do, Dr. Ebony.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Hey, everybody. I am a licensed psychologist in Texas, and a lot of the work that I do in therapy focuses on helping Black women and other women of color heal and work through issues that have come up for them around trauma, that being interpersonal trauma, so trauma that's happened at the hands of somebody else, that's domestic violence, childhood abuse, those kinds of things, as recent years, my practice has kind of flowed into including racial trauma. So helping us navigate trauma that we experience in the workplace, like microaggressions, trauma that we see right in front of our eyes as we're scrolling social media and looking at the news, our people who look like us being killed, a lot of the injustices that are happening, learning how to navigate that and learning how to heal while all of this stuff is still going on, and also paying attention to intergenerational trauma, those things that have been passed down to us and still live in our bodies. So a large part of my practice does center around that as well, and just providing information, disseminating information to communities around how we can manage this and better help ourselves so that we can heal as a community.
Hmm. Okay. So you said you've seen have you seen more people reaching out for help in reference to racial trauma in the last few years? Since we all know that incidents of racism have really picked up in the last few years. Are you seeing an uptick in those people seeking out those services? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. One of the
Hmm.
unique things that I think about social media is that people have access to all kinds of folks across the world, right? And so some people come to my little corner of the internet and seek me out and want to do work around racial trauma as things kind of happen, social justice stuff, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, all of these things start to kind of unravel and kind of are shown to us, and we're working through that. So people are coming to therapy because they feel the distress in their bodies,
Hmm.
they feel the pain and the sadness in their bodies, and it kind of brings up some other things that they've already been dealing with. I mean, just in the past week or so, we've heard about 2 deaths by suicide in our community of
Right.
celebrities, right? So people are really struggling now with that
Hmm.
and struggling with seeing that. So the trauma never ends. The distress never ends. And so people
Hmm.
are continuously kind of seeking this service out or seeking help. One of the, I think, unique things about where I sit in this world is that I'm in Austin, Texas, which is kind of like becoming a smaller version of Silicon Valley, the tech industry, right? So
Right.
a lot of
Hmm.
tech companies are here, and I my practice basically grew because of the need of Black women in tech needing a space, needing a safe space to process the trauma that they were experiencing in the workplace. I don't know how much you've
Hmm.
heard, but there's a lot
Right.
of conversation around the microaggressions, the racism that Black women and other women of color experience in the tech space. And
Hmm.
so yes, a lot of
Hmm.
people are seeking out services to learn how to manage that and basically a safe place to process that.
Right. What types of microaggressions are you seeing people experiencing, especially like you said in the tech industry? I know that there
Mhm.
aren't many people of color or Black people in the tech industry,
Mhm.
and some say that they're trying to improve those numbers. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But what type of microaggressions do you think are they experiencing?
I call this a microaggression, but I think this is a macroaggression. It's a systemic issue. But like for
Hmm.
example, some women work at tech companies and they have a Black sector of that tech company, large tech company. I don't want to name names, but large tech
Right.
company, and they're given a very small budget where the Black
Mm.
committee is asking us to come in and speak to the other Black people in tech around mental health issues, and they don't have a budget to pay us. I know these people
Mm.
have money, but they have not
Right.
given them the money to pay us. And so those things like
Right.
um, giving them space that's theirs, but also not giving them the resources that they need to maximize this space. Also, not
Right.
giving the, I see a lot of women who are placed in contract roles. I'm not saying that Black women don't get those permanent positions, but a lot of people that I work with get contract roles and are never moved up to permanent full-time positions. And these
Mm-hmm.
are typically Black women, other women of color. Desk positioning, voice in meetings, because I actually work with a Black woman who all of her colleagues are older white men. And as a
Mm-hmm.
designer, she's having conversations with these older white men. And she's the only Black voice in the room, or a person of color, and often feeling silenced, and like her opinion doesn't matter, or that she doesn't know as much. And so she often,
Right.
struggles with inferiority or imposter syndrome. Do I really belong here? So those kinds of things are coming up for people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you work with young people also who may experience racial trauma in school?
No, I don't. So my area of
No.
expertise is not teens or children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm particularly work with adults. And so when we see
Okay.
this, we're experiencing it on the corporate side, the work side of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I know it's happening in schools. Like, I have no doubt. I know it
Right,
is.
right, right.
Mhm.
You had mentioned social media before. I want to kind of get into that. Um,
Mhm.
are you finding you working with any clients who are having issues, um, like you said, seeing everything on social media and trying to deal with that and it affecting their mental wellness? Is that something you're seeing also?
Every single day, every
Mm,
single day. um so one of the tools that we can talk about and kind of circle back around to is curating
mhm,
your feed to be a healthy feed, curating
mm,
your feed to be one that is actually helping you, versus kind of like sending you through this just experience of
wormhole.
anxiety and depression. It's a wormhole, because
Yeah.
you know we follow all of these people, and if all we're taking in and all we're consuming is negative information,
Hmm.
controversial information, fearful or fear-based information, that's what's going to kind of curate the thoughts that we have and then dictate the
Right.
feelings that we have. So yes, a lot of people are experiencing a lot of depression based on what they see in the virtual world, and we it's hard to separate. It may be easier for us, because I'm like an older millennial. It's easier
Hmm.
for us to separate real world from the virtual world, because I actually had to live in a
In
real
both.
world. But people coming after
Mhm.
us, they only have like really a virtual world, and that
Right.
is what their world consists of. And so it's really easy to get lost in that world and to think that that world is actually real. And so we don't realize we're seeing highlight reels of people's lives, and so we tend to compare ourselves to
Hmm.
people. We compare our bodies to people. We compare the money that we have to people, and it can start to make us, because we're now living in this very large bubble. We can
Hmm.
kind of start to kind of think that we don't have it all together, or feel this pressure to have it all together, which then brings on feelings of anxiety and depression, and feelings of disappointment and that kind of thing. And you can just kind of get taken down by that stuff if you're not careful. It's very
Right.
different
Right.
than us just going to school with these people who live in our neighborhood, or going to college with these people who live like in the state or a couple states over. Is not the same. We have access to
Right.
people all over the world, and we're comparing
Don't
ourselves
even
to
know
real.
you.
Yeah, don't even know you. Don't know you, know
Hmm.
nothing about you, and you know nothing about them, but we're comparing ourselves to them.
Right. Right. Exactly. Um, so as far as you said, curating your feed, is that more
Mhm.
like just liking those more positive, healthy things for your mental wellness?
Yeah.
Trying to change the algorithm and hopefully,
Yeah.
get that feed more positive.
Yeah, so I'm so in the world of, so I think that Instagram, you have a little bit more control over the feed that you
Hmm.
curate, because you can actually follow people, right? You can actually follow people, you can actually mute people, you can actually
Right.
only see who you turn notifications on for.
That's
Versus,
true.
I love TikTok, but versus TikTok, where you go to the explore page and you get everything. And it's almost like
Hmm.
you have to click out of those messages, because if you click on one video, you're going to keep seeing more and more and more videos
The
like that.
same.
It's almost like you
Hmm.
have to not spend amount of seconds in there, so it doesn't become what's on your feed. So you got to be a little bit careful around those different types of platforms, because Facebook is different, Instagram is different, TikTok is different, right? But
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you're following pages, or even setting aside time to say, I'm only going to look at content on Mondays that lift me up and gets my tone started for the week. So even if you
Right.
enjoy the explore page and that kind of thing, you can still set aside time where you're
Mm-hmm.
going to choose and intentionally engage and consume content that actually builds you up versus kind of making you feel anxious or reinforcing depression and that kind of
Right. Right. So, as far as tools go, what are some
thing.
tools that Black women can use in the workplace to deal with those microaggressions that we talked about?
Yes, the first thing I would say is community. It is
Mm-hmm.
very hard. And if you can't find community inside of work, finding it in another way. I know there's a Black women in tech virtual community space, online
Mm-hmm.
community space. So finding community where you can have a safe space to process what's going on, because when we are experiencing these things, it can sometimes feel like you're the only one experiencing it, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
true. And so when you get with community, when you get in community, you can process these things and people can tell you how they actually navigate. One of my most favorite things about therapy is that we get to do group therapy. And while group
Mm-hmm.
therapy may be intimidating to some people, group therapy provides us the opportunity to engage in community so we can bounce ideas off of each other and we don't have to think for ourselves alone. We can have partnership. So in the same ways, I think that we can do that with community. So find online community spaces, in-person community spaces, engage, keep that network. The other thing that I would say is to figure out who your allies are.
Mm-hmm.
I think allies a lot of times are often underrated, but we need allyship. And so figure out who those people are who can help you advocate, who can give voice to the problems that you are experiencing, and who can actually take it to a place where it would be, I guess, taken seriously. Right. So we
Mm-hmm.
need
Mm-hmm.
allyship. So search for where the allyships are. Another thing I think people can do is talk to your human resource department about what they are doing to make sure that you're having a positive experience and a fair experience. That's the word I want to use. Make sure you're having a fair experience at work.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
other thing I would say is to give ourselves space to take breaks. I know that
Mm-hmm.
I'm a person who used to feel guilty for taking off work, who used to feel guilty for using my vacation days, but take off
Right.
work, use your
Mm-hmm.
days, get some time to reset so that you can be fully a lot more filled up when you go into that space. I always talk to people about looking at ourselves like a battery. If we're already experiencing social justice issues in the outside world, we have
Right.
home life stuff to deal with, we're in a pandemic, all of these things are happening, our battery is going to be significantly low. So what are those
Right.
things we can do to reset, to give ourselves a little bit more juice? Because the less juice we have, the more things are going to sting, and the less ability we're going to have to tolerate a lot of things. So build your
Mm-hmm.
battery up so that you have mental clarity enough to know how to navigate these things, and you can be able to say what you want to say, navigate it the way that you want to navigate it. Because sometimes when we're just drained, we can go into meetings and we can take a back seat, and before we know it, we're like, did I just hear that? Did that just happen? Like, it goes by us
Right.
so fast. But if we're
Mm-hmm.
clear and we are reset, we can be a little bit more present. We can call things out a little faster. We can advocate for ourselves a little better, and we can actually do and show up in ways that feel authentic to us. So I say take that time off, use those vacation days, and I especially know that in the tech space, they're given a lot of luxury with days and time that they take off. But even if you don't have that luxury, see where you can. Like teachers, for instance, they're really limited with the time they can take off. But see where
Right.
those spaces are where you can fill yourself up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other tools you can think of that people can use? Was
Yes.
that
So
pretty?
I actually so back to the curate your feed. Make sure that when you're leaving work or when you're at home that you're also doing things that aren't completely draining you. Make sure that you are not trying to be everything to everybody, and that you are actually setting boundaries and taking care of yourself in ways that are meaningful. Carve out days and time where you can just be filled up, and do those things that bring you joy, do those things that bring
Right.
you pleasure. Those reduce
Mm-hmm.
depression and anxiety symptoms more than we know. And I just have to
Mm-hmm.
say that I also created my therapy cards for people to have an accessible and low cost option to do quality level insight work.
Right.
So that's always
I
an
was going to
option.
ask about those therapy cards. I saw those
Yeah.
on your website. They look like they could be
Yeah.
very helpful at home.
Yeah, at home by
Mm-hmm.
yourself, with your colleagues, with your girlfriends,
Mm-hmm.
with your family, with your therapist. So just the time to kind of reflect and see what are some things that I'm doing that may be creating more problems for me, or what are the things I can work on that I have control over that can help me
Mm-hmm.
heal. Because a lot of times things are
Mm-hmm.
out of our control and we can feel very hopeless, but there are a lot of things that are within our control that we can actually do to heal and feel better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you? What's your
Yes.
website and social media?
So my website is Dr. Ebony, drebony.com,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm all over the internet, all over social
Mm-hmm.
media, Facebook, Instagram at Dr. Ebony online, and on TikTok, Dr. Ebony. So it's just Dr.
Oh, you're on
Ebony
TikTok too.
across the, yeah. I'm trying to be consistent with TikTok. TikTok is a whole different
Yeah,
animal, so I'm trying to
it
manage it all.
is.
But
It is. It is. But I definitely make sure to follow you on all those
yes,
platforms
I'm
for
on
sure.
there.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Dr. Ebony online. That's where I am.
Hmm. And I know you're a therapist. Do you see people outside of Texas? Do you see people virtually?
This is a good conversation, Cherie. Is it Cherie or Cherie?
Cherie, it's okay.
Cherie. Okay,
It's
Cherie.
Cherie.
This is a very good conversation that I think we actually could spend more time on. Therapists are
Mm-hmm.
only allowed to practice in the states that they're licensed. So while
Okay.
you see me showing up across all of these platforms, I can only really provide therapy to residents of Texas. And a lot of people don't
Okay.
know that. So a lot of people may be messaging providers on the internet that they see and wondering why they may not be getting calls back and that kind of thing, because we're limited by law to only practice in the
Mm-hmm.
state that we're licensed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But those therapy cards and your website, all that,
Yeah.
the information I'm sure you provide on social media is still very helpful to
Yeah,
everybody.
and my therapy cards is mytherapycards.com. So that's my little contribution to the mental health space, and to one way to
Mm-hmm.
try to work around not being able to provide therapy to people in other states is I took the same questions that I asked my clients in session and I put them in the therapy card so that people could have more
Mm-hmm.
access to them. So that's my
Mm-hmm.
little way to kind of do that. And so many other therapists go on social media, provide content information so they can reach more people. So definitely fill your feed and following with people who can actually help you.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ebony.
Yeah.
I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Cherie.
Black and Fit Family. We're gonna continue these kinds of conversations. This is a new segment that we're calling Health in Black, where we'll talk more deeply about issues um, around health that deal specifically with Black people. So, thanks again for your time. Don't forget, everyone, to follow Black and Fit on social media, BLK and Fit, and check out our website at blackandfit.com.